Coach, thank you very much for joining me on this Simple Coach to Coach interview. Really do appreciate it. We're talking to each other from different time zones, so that makes it exciting for me because it's hard to get teams from out west to want to do an interview. So really do appreciate you taking the time today to join me.
Absolutely, yeah. Happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
That's what they all say at the beginning. Hey, so I was just looking through your bio. I mean, you've been at Gustavus Adolphus since 2018. Could you just talk about your sort of soccer journey and how you ended up at Gustavus, especially since I noticed that you have an accent of sorts?
Yeah. I grew up in the academy system in England, kind of like on the fringes, kind of in and out of some different clubs, Norwich City and Southampton's academies, and kind of like satellite affiliates and stuff like that. So always thought that I was going to be a pro soccer player. Was traveling out to the US for different club tournaments and basically went through the same kind of recruiting process that a lot of US kids went through. I ended up at a school in Minnesota. Right after I graduated, knew I wanted to go into coaching. Got an opportunity out in the Pacific Northwest in Portland. Got really lucky to kind of be around some of the best, in my view, some of the best coaches in the country at that time. UP's coaching staff was absolutely fantastic. So I had a great apprenticeship out west. But always knew that I wanted to get back to Minnesota and specifically get back to the conference that I played in. I played at St. John's and went to St. John's as my first kind of full-time coaching gig in college. Had some success. Got promoted to the associate head coach. After 4 years, I left and I took over the men's and the women's positions at Nebraska Wesleyan, which was definitely a learning curve.
Gosh.
Yeah. Trying to balance both of those programs at the same time was interesting, but I learned a lot. I made twice as many mistakes and I think grew a lot. And then from there, we finished really well in my last year with Nebraska Wesleyan relative to where the team had been. And it opened up the door to come back to Minnesota, to the MIAC and to Gustavus, which people that know the MIAC knows that, it's kind of a powerhouse program or has been historically. So
So you're a Johnny.
I am.
Right?
I am. Yeah.
I know I first learned of St. John's through American football. I went to Mount Union, which was
of course
is
crazy rivalry.
Crazy rivalries. Yeah. And the legendary coach, I forget his name, from
John Galati.
Yeah, Galati. Yeah, he was there. So
I've got some interesting stories about John. I'll tell you off air after. He's a legend. He's a legend.
That's why we're doing it. That's why we're doing this. So I don't hold that against you. We'll continue the interview.
Different football.
All right, so I'm going to ask you. And then plus it's the wrong football. I'm going to ask you some dumb questions, especially for somebody who lives in Minneapolis, right? So I apologize in advance. Having been to Minneapolis on business quite a lot, I'm a big fan. I golfed at the Wilds
cool.
golf course.
Yeah, nice.
Which was brutally difficult. Anyhow, talk to me a little bit about Gustavus. Is there something about the school that's unique in the area that?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking in the context of soccer, the talent that you bring, because you watching you over the fall, you have some real talent on your team, really impressive.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We have some nice pieces, some elite players that I don't know whether we would get if we were in a different geo market. I think Minnesota is relatively unique in the sense that we're not just saturated with Division 1s, Division 2s, NAIAs. So the Division 3 culture is really strong, and it just happens that we also have a very good academic conference there as well. So I think a lot of times, if you're a Minnesota kid with talent or close to Minnesota with talent, and you want to stay close to home, some of your options are limited in the way that they're maybe not in Ohio, for instance.
Yeah.
So we'll get local Division One guys that again you wouldn't get in other states. So like, I mean, Jared Hecht for us is one of those players. He's the 6'6" redhead center back who,
Yeah.
I mean,
Ginormous.
yeah,
And a real player. Sorry.
Real player. Yeah. I know after our Chicago game that they were kind of like, where'd you get this guy from? And he's one of those. He could have gone to a lot of Division One teams, had a bunch of offers, wanted to stay closer to home, knew some guys on the team, and we kept him. The other part of that is like regionally for us, Gustavus has done very, very well. So we're a well-known soccer school, but a soccer program that if you're one of those local guys with talent and you want to stay close to home and you want to not guarantee, but you want to know you're realistically going to be in championship contention every single year. I think we're just a good option, and we have a community that kind of does a lot of those same things. It's not just our program. It's fun when you come to campus and you see the banners from all of the teams around campus. There's a very healthy, I think, athletic community and vibe for sure.
Yeah. Is yours? Would you consider Gustavus? I think it's a school that I know of somebody who graduated. I don't know, but
yeah,
I'm one of my favorite authors. I think James McPherson. If you're into history,
I don't know. No, I haven't heard of him.
Battle Cry of Freedom. Great. Anyhow, is it considered a high academic school?
Yeah. I'd say it was like we're not in the. That's the other thing. Our conference is probably somewhat like academically in the shadow of like Carleton, for instance, or McAllister. So we've got a couple of schools that are just, I mean, elite of elite amongst the best schools in the world, let alone the country.
Right.
So we're probably in that next tier of schools underneath. So we've got some big programs, but we're not like Carleton, where the entire school is just
just crazy,
academically a powerhouse.
Crazy smart. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm just trying to get some context because in this whole exercise of YouTube, I've been trying very hard to sort of go out and I'm in New Jersey, so it's really easy to just focus in on from Virginia to Maine out to Ohio.
You got so many teams there as well, right?
Right. I mean, I could spend the next 3 years just talking to coaches just in that region and still not cover enough, right?
Sure.
There's plenty of schools. So yeah, I'm really curious. But all right, so back to the normal track here. So now I get it. I understand. You've been coaching for a while, so. And as a player at St. John's, you have that unique, hey, I played Division III as well. So let me ask you, do you think the game has changed since the days when you played? Has it, and I'm thinking more of the individually, like, are they better players? Is it tactically more smarter? I mean, from our days, we're just bloodbaths, right? It was like, can I break a leg? Can I slide tackle? Can I get my cleats into the back of somebody's, so.
Yeah, good question. I guess I don't know. I mean, the recency bias would say, like players are better. The club system, whilst it has its flaws, is providing more opportunities for people. Like soccer's a bigger sport in the country than it was 20 years ago. So just, I mean, the simple math on that would suggest it probably has moved forward. I don't know whether that gap is giant compared to when we were there, but what I do think is it's just become a lot more professionalized in general. I think when I was coming through and we were coming through, a lot of Division III coaches were still probably 50-50 teaching classes, doing whatever else on campus, versus now it is a full-time position that is, I think, attracting professional coaches, people that do this all day, every single day. I think that's the majority of programs now. And then the other part is I think facilities have also moved forward, right? So generally speaking, gone are the days where you'd go to, you'd roll up to a grass pitch and the grass is 3 inches long and, you could be playing in puddles and stuff like that. So the game probably does.
That? That's right.
Some good memories.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think the game is probably a lot more tactical, and it probably is
Uh-huh.
a lot prettier as well, just because yeah, players are a little
Yeah.
bit more technical and the surfaces are nicer.
Yeah. 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 It's a good point. I never thought. I mean, I never thought. I never combined the two. Right. I always knew the facilities have just gotten outrageous.
Yeah,
Right. Like, I mean,
yeah. I mean, we
we
we just
played.
we're building a $70 million brand new facility now, and it's just,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
it's
you are.
crazy. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty jealous because again, the facilities that I came through, it was very
Yeah,
bare
yeah.
bones.
I'm angry. I'm angry. You've
Yeah,
got a lot of strikes against you already.
these guys, our guys are like mad that the shield on their locker is like slightly wonky or something like
Yeah.
that.
You have lockers.
Yeah,
Wow. I'll tell
exactly.
you.
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
that's awesome. No, but I knew that they've gotten outrageous. So
yeah,
kids play on the best surfaces. I'll even say the teams playing on natural grass by and large the better half, right? Like
yeah,
the better half of those, like play on really nice fields, right? Like they're manicured, they know how to take care of them, that
yeah,
sort of thing. But I never combine the two. Like, hey, your playing surfaces are a lot better, and by your players are a lot more technical. And so, what does that do, right? Because you might have been really technical back in my day, but end
right.
of October, that did you no good because you had to basically go through mud the whole time, right? Like you're
Exactly.
dribbling.
And I came through St. John's. We played on grass. We played on long grass.
Yeah.
I was a technical player, a one v
Uh-huh.
one player. I reflect on it
Mm-hmm.
now. Obviously I loved a lot of things about my experience, but if I think about
Yeah.
the better soccer playing environment
Stuck.
for me, I
Yeah.
probably should have gone
Yeah.
to a turf team or something like that. That
Yeah. Yeah.
would have fit me a
Yeah.
little bit more. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's interesting. That's an interesting thought exercise. Just thinking about that. And then as I look back, like I said, there
yeah.
was
I do think.
definitely,
I also think that coaches that, like I said, have moved on, and things like
yeah.
access to film and tactical pads and all of that
Mm,
kind of stuff. That I mean, we
yeah.
barely ever did any film when I was in my playing
Yeah.
days,
Yeah.
and
It was too hard.
yeah,
I hate to say it, especially during the season, doing film back then was
right.
too hard. Like you had to turn around so quick. Like how you had
This
to
is I
watch
can come
last
straight
year's
into the
film.
office
That was
after the
yeah.
game, plug in our VO or whatever, or send it to
Yeah.
VidSwap,
Yeah.
and it just will spit out the
Yeah.
clips for us, right? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's for sure.
That's
Technology has
interesting.
definitely helped.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Okay. All right. So let's go to some of the rule changes now. I just want to get your thoughts on the no overtime, even though you've had overtimes that have gone to PKs. But um, during the regular season, you tied Wartburg, Bethany Lutheran, uh, UW Whitewater,
Yeah.
geez almighty, and Augsburg. I can't escape Whitewater, but anyhow, and Augsburg. And then
Yeah.
you tied, but went to PKs against a really, really good. I was really impressed with
Hmm.
Eau Claire, and
Good
then
team.
obviously Saint Olaf. What with that under your belt this first season, what are your thoughts on the lack of overtime during the regular season? Is it something? Do you think it was a positive, a negative? Do you like it? Not like it?
I think it makes a ton of sense from a kind of a logistical administration standpoint. I think it really helps
Mm-hmm.
them when you know for a fact that you can kind of lock in on this time frame and double headers and stuff like that. From a student experience standpoint, I don't think it's great. I think you lose a lot of those really cool moments, those walk off goals, and you're
Yeah.
running on the pitch and celebrating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for any program, those are cool moments, especially for the majority of programs that are not going to go and compete for championships and stuff like that. That might be the
Yeah.
coolest thing they experience all year. So I don't love that piece of it. Selfishly, I don't like it because my teams have never tied games ever. In my 4 years before this year, I'd only had two ties, and this year we had six. So that's an absolute nightmare. I just
Yeah.
can't handle that. Um, and some of those games, like I feel like had we gone to OT, we've got momentum. I think we
Yeah.
probably get the result, and that's
Yeah.
usually what's happened. I do also think I think the OT rule in combination with the substitute rules in the United States makes it really challenging. because with the sub-in rules that we currently have, you don't have to worry about players really getting tired. Not in the same way that you
Yeah.
would if you could only
Yeah.
use whatever the number is, limited number of subs. Which means you can play like Marcelo Bielsa's Leeds for 90 minutes and just press and line change and go, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you had OT, generally speaking, I think most teams, I mean, there's still a little bit of that, but most teams would play out the 90 minutes and then like
Yeah.
OT, you could maybe stall and kill that off pretty comfortably
Yeah. Yeah.
and get a result. But now I really noticed a difference that teams would get, and especially the underdog team in the matchup, right? They'd get to
Mm-hmm.
the set like around the 70th minute, and then you're
And
killing the game from the 70th minute instead of the 90th
yeah.
minute. So it just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not hard to ruin a game of soccer if you really want to. So just losing that extra 20 minutes, I think, just adds that
Yeah.
extra incentive, and I don't know whether it's going to result in a better quality of game. Could be wrong,
Yeah.
but that's my hunch.
I've spoken to a couple of coaches who talked about teams. It's almost like there are teams that are practicing like the how do you waste time in the last 20 minutes? Like how do you
100%.
slow walk a throw in? How do
Yeah.
you how many times do you check your boots and then you pull up your socks and get your all set, to kill a couple minutes, as
That's a
much as you
really good
can.
point, actually, because now that you say that, I mean that definitely happened in a way more professional
Yeah.
way than I think
Yeah.
we'd seen previously.
And it just frustrates you who thinks, man, we're just this scoreboard, like we deserve to be up or for whatever the reason. And
Right.
the other team's like, hey, we'll take a tie right now.
Right.
So
Well, and I
um
mean, one example of that would be our last, second to last game of the season. We're playing Hamlin. That's
mhm,
historically kind of bottom half of the conference. I think we had
uh-huh,
outshot them 38-3 or something like that, and it was 0-0, and we score in the last 60 seconds. And
uh-huh.
and obviously you're very close to a result that probably pulls
Yeah,
the championship away from you at that point. So
yeah.
yeah,
That's interesting. I was just looking at it here. Okay, so they pass a rule about the spring training not this spring, but next spring.
yeah,
You're going to get more time. I was wondering your thoughts on that. I mean, do you welcome that? That you get another 6
yeah.
another week of practice, or
I think so. Yeah, I think it's a positive. I think there's a fine line. You don't want to go into the kind of the area where you begin to become a little bit overbearing and you have too much
mm-hmm,
control in your athletes' lives. But the reality is that I think especially for young men, more structure
mm-hmm,
around their day and around their week is a good thing. Our guys, and I'm
good
sure it's
thing.
true on most college campuses, our guys
Mm-hmm,
have better GPAs during the season than they have out of season. So you take the soccer piece out of it completely. I just think it's better for the person to be able to be around
mm-hmm,
their peers and the person, me and my coaching staff who have
mm-hmm.
more interactions and more access than any college professor would on campus. I think that's
Yeah.
definitely a net gain. And then I think when you expand the number there, you make it well, I'll put it this way. When we only had seven or we had, 16, every single one of those days feels really precious. So you have to try to
Mm-hmm.
pack in as much as you possibly can
Yeah.
into those days.
Yeah.
And now those days actually feel like almost too much, like and maybe a burden
Yeah.
to some, versus if you spread that
Mm-hmm.
workload out, I think it allows you to just have these shorter, more frequent touch points. So like now that we've
Yeah.
got, this number of practices, we're never going to do a 2.5 hour training session. We'll do,
Yeah.
an hour and 15, hour and a half, and touch base, make sure everyone's okay, and then they can get on with the rest of the week. So I think it's
Yeah.
good all around.
Yeah. Would
What do
you
you
have
think?
welcomed? Well, oh, what do I think? Oh,
Yeah,
so I think it's a good thing.
yeah,
I'm one of those who just, I mean, without going down a rabbit hole, I was one of those that in the spring I just completely would lose it because I just had too much time and
yeah.
it wasn't a good thing, right? And
I was one of
and
those as well, for sure, 100%.
yeah,
Yeah,
it was just there was just too much to do, too much time, and I would lose. I would just lose it in the
I
spring.
think,
And that
and
was a
especially coming out of COVID, where mental
oh
health and
yeah,
some of those types of things, I think there's
yeah.
that level of isolation that I don't know
Yeah,
whether that's good for sure.
that's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm for me, I don't know how you do it. I think kids are a lot different than they were in the '80s when I was going, but so in a better way. I mean, they're much more academically inclined
Yeah.
than that we were. I mean, we had other interests, but um, the I always say, like, I think kids, the structure of being on a team is invaluable in their off the field development, right?
100%.
So,
Yeah.
like the discipline that whatever the discipline that they have to be to make sure that they show up to practice on time and all those little things and making sure that they have the right socks and then this and then that
Right.
is invaluable. And I think it does force them to not allow themselves to be distracted by all the noise, because in college I just think there's a lot of noise,
There's a lot
good
of
and bad, right?
and a lot
Right,
of free,
good and bad.
honestly, a lot of free time. And again, I think that lack of
Yeah,
structure is not healthy for
yeah,
an 18 to
yeah.
22-year-old.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Whose world is just opened up, right? Like, let's
Right.
be honest. You're in high school, you're in this cocoon, whatever, in a bubble, and then you get to college, and like I tell my kids, like, you're when you go to college, your world just sort of like suddenly you realize everything that's out there and what
Yeah.
you can do, and again, good and bad, and you just hope you sort of
And we're
navigate
competitive
it.
people, right? Like
Correct,
they're going to
correct,
go and find those competitive outlets somewhere, and
correct,
some
correct.
some good and some less
There's
productive,
some
right?
not so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
We can talk about those
Yeah. Yeah.
offline.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, all right, so you went you went 22-3. You lost the MIAC tournament. Um, I mean, you were ranked as high as fifth in the country. I'll be honest with you. I don't think I ranked you as high. I liked how you played, but I
I
just
didn't
think
rank
you
us
just
that high either.
no. Okay,
Yeah.
yes, I nailed it. um,
Um,
I did. I thought you really good. Like I don't doubt. I mean, I think you were 10th or ninth somewhere in there in my rankings.
yeah.
I do think you have a heck of a team, and that was new to me because I hadn't watched you guys before. So
Yeah.
you were almost like a find for me. But um, you, and obviously you got to play Chicago in the quarters, I think.
Yeah. Elite Eight. Yeah.
Yeah, quarters. Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you something. Was there a point, and knowing you since you've been there, you've had an outstanding performance, right?
Thank
Like
you.
every year, the team is
Yeah.
really good. Did you think at some point this season, like these guys we're good, we can go far, or were you just sort of like on this continuum of, hey, we're just sort of doing what we been doing, and now it's sort of paying off? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. No, it makes sense for sure. I think it's probably a little bit more of the latter, to be fair.
Mm,
I thought we were good. I definitely knew we had some really elite pieces. We had
yeah,
some guys that are all Americans, although weren't
yeah,
necessarily awarded it. They're at that level.
yeah, yeah,
So I knew we'd be in conversations for these types of things, but we've always been a program that has taken it game by game. We will preach, don't trip on a pebble because you're focused on the finish line. I think you need to know
yeah, yeah.
ultimately where you want to go, but if you're too focused on that, I think that's when the mishaps
You lose it.
yeah
Yeah,
occur. So no, it was honestly pretty much game by game, and let's just see where it takes us. I'd also say at the beginning of the year, if you'd asked us after our Green Bay trip, and then ties that maybe we
yeah,
don't
yeah.
think we should have had, you'd asked me where we would end. I probably wouldn't have said number five in the country and an undefeated regular
Yeah,
season.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I think those are the ones that make us really odd to look at on paper because there's always a story, right? But that
yeah,
first essentially 3 weeks to months, I mean, we were going into games starting our number 5, 6, and 7 forwards, right? Where there was a couple of games where we had 7 guys that we would consider starting on the sidelines, and as they got back, I think that's really when you started to pick up momentum and have a better sense of who we were. And we picked up a lot of clean sheets, especially in that first half of the season. I think we ended up with 12 or 13 altogether. And any time, you're difficult to beat, you're going to give yourself a shot, right?
Yeah.
So,
by the way, can you do something for me?
Yeah.
Can you have your athletics website be like everybody else's, so I can figure out how to navigate the thing?
Trust me, we're trying so hard. Yeah. It's a work in progress.
How do I get back?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? I said what I said, and that's where
it's on the way. It's part of the upgrade.
It took me like 20 minutes today. Like, where do I find this stuff? And
just text me. I'll send you the links.
Was there a game that stood out? The regular season, not the tournament. Is there one where you were like, "Oh, I hate to boil your season down, your super successful season down to one game that you just thought was the difference, was the turning point? Like, is there anything like that?"
There's probably a couple, if it's okay if I give a few of them. So one would have been the Loris game after, a disappointing tie at Bethany Lutheran. We get ourselves in a bad situation, and it's that last 7 minutes of the game, and we score 3 goals and just, kind of explode at the end of the game there.
And they're not too shabby either.
No, they're tough to play against. They're very physically gifted, and they'll be direct and make things challenging for you. So I think to have that response when you're a goal down and to not quit, I think that really began to imprint on the group, and that became a part of our identity moving forward. You saw a little bit of that in the Whitewater game, where that's a whole different story. It was absolute chaos.
That's what they do. Whitewater, every sport, it's just chaos up there.
And then you saw again a little bit of it against Augsburg, who's a really gifted I don't think people realize how gifted Augsburg are, and you look at their results, and anytime they play a top 25 team, they get a result. And to again score in the last minute in that game, to come back from a bad situation, I think those types of games really, really made a big difference. And then ultimately, it was always going to come down to our game against St. Olaf, right? Whoever won that game was probably going to win the conference. That's been a really fun thing in the last handful of years, is Travis and Justin have come in there and done just an absolutely incredible job, and they've been awesome. Did I have that
last year? I thought they were so good. I was like, these guys could be Final Four material. I thought they were that good.
I thought they probably were this year as well. To be honest, I thought they were very, very talented.
The couple games that I watched of theirs might not have been their best. I just thought that there was something that just wasn't as smooth as it was last year. And again, I'm watching from New Jersey on a video screen. That's sometimes not the best of. So I might not. Actually, their videos are not that bad. Their production isn't bad. But so that was my sense of them this year. But look, we're talking degrees, right? They were absolutely fantastic. They have what's his name? The kid up top.
Victor?
Yes.
Special.
Yeah, I'm a big
special
player.
Yep.
Different. I say, there are guys who are really, really good, and I'm like, you're a really good. But there's only a handful of special players out there, and he was
for sure.
For
sure.
Yeah.
And
I could just imagine him in person. He's probably lightning fast with the ball. So good.
He's adding things to his game as well, which is the frustrating thing,
for you, Yeah, how'd you let him get away? Like,
his brother went to Olaf, so he was never going anywhere else. Yeah.
It's again another a school that I watched where I was like, I saw the facilities, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at those. That is
Yeah.
just a great atmosphere. It's not a mud pit. You know.
Yep.
Anyhow,
Yeah.
that's sort of
But
got
it's been
sidetracked.
really cool
Um,
to have that in conference rival. And we've had
yeah,
others over the years, right? St. Thomas before they went Division One
yeah,
was that for
yeah,
sure. And I don't know whether we were
yeah.
really sure whether someone would kind of step into St. Thomas's shoes once
Uh-huh.
they left, and St. Olaf have done that, and it's been great for both
Yeah,
programs, great for the conference. Yeah,
yeah. Like I said, I mean, you could easily get sucked in this vortex of so many schools around here, and almost think like, oh, there's nothing else. But you like you guys, like you said, Saint Olaf. I'm a big Luther fan,
yeah.
probably because I like Chris
Chris is
there.
really good. So yeah,
He's
yeah,
a great guy. Has great vision. Um, and I'm like, yeah, and those are your Western states.
yeah.
Those to me, like, there's diamonds out there. I keep thinking to myself, there's more diamonds.
There's some
Eau Claire, I
really
was
good
like, wow,
programs.
look at
Yeah.
those guys.
And we do. We all have every. I mean, it's the one negative about maybe the East Coast is that it's so
Yeah,
saturated with schools. It is difficult for a Division 3 program to
yeah,
pull out a top level you know Division 1 guy versus
yeah,
again like we
yeah,
just are in a different situation here, and our geo market just helps us. So
yeah.
yeah,
Hey, can I ask? This totally reminded me of something when I said Western states. How difficult is it for you to compete? I'm thinking especially in the NCAA's, like just because I mean you guys got to go more distance than you can hop on a bus for half of the games in these regions around here.
we're in a better situation than like let's say like the Texas schools probably, or like the
Yeah,
PLU or
Colorado
something like that.
College. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
yeah. So we're still for the first 2 rounds we're still driving or on buses. Obviously we hosted the
yeah,
first round, which is always
yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
massive advantage, but like the trip to Chicago, it's a long one, but it's not unmanageable by any means.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
so I don't know. No, I think we're pretty accustomed to it as well. We've been to the NCAA 3 of my
yeah,
5 seasons as well, so I think
yeah.
that's kind of ingrained in the program. We don't get typically overwhelmed by the occasion, although
Hmm.
you could maybe say this year we probably put a lot emotionally into that St. Olaf game in the Sweet 16,
Yeah.
and I don't know whether we had enough left to be able to really challenge Chicago the next day.
Uh huh.
Um, but yeah, no, I think our program's pretty used to being there. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll ask the dumb question that I always do, but I'm gonna say like, is it fair to say that, right? Because you don't want to talk about it and all that stuff. But I mean, do you have serious aspiration? Like, what's your goal? Like, yeah, you want to get to a Final Four, you want to win it, like, right? Because you've
yeah,
reached. Look, you got to the quarterfinals and you were a goal away, right? Against the national champion, right? Like luck of the
yeah,
draw, that sort of thing. So, I mean, is that realistic for you? I mean, is that the way you're looking at it?
yeah. I mean, yes, it is. We ultimately like we don't really set super concrete goals for the season,
Mm-hmm.
although we talk about the legacy of the program all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
numbers of championships, and we're one of the few teams in the North region that's gone to the national championship game previously.
Right. Right.
We talk about trying to do something special, trying to write our own chapter in what
Mm-hmm.
is a really cool story of Gustavus soccer.
Yeah.
So ultimately, to do the most special thing would be to go that step further.
Mm-hmm.
I think the guys probably recognized that there was a little bit of a gap between us and Chicago, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think it did just give them that taste, and knowing that we
Yeah.
don't give away a stupid penalty early in the game, and
Yeah.
maybe we can nick a chance off a set piece or push them to penalties, which we're quite good at. um,
Yeah.
yeah, it was there for us, and then we're watching the Final Four together, and we're like, oh man, we could have been there, and we
Mm-hmm.
think we would have had a really good
Yeah.
shot against any of those teams. Um,
Yeah.
but
I just think
yeah,
confluence, right, of those events. You just sort of ended at Chicago, and I think
yeah,
Chicago was just at a level that no one else. No
I
one
mean,
else. This year in
their
particular.
third best defender played for the Man United Youth Academy and captained England's
Oh yeah, I had no
schoolboys.
idea. I had no
They're
idea.
Naz,
Yeah,
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 they've got some special pieces there that,
yeah,
yeah, just made them a
yeah.
bit different.
So talk to me about that game, right? Like, I I will say I do think it was insane. I'm not a weather, like I don't complain about the weather, but I do think it was insane the weather, and probably more importantly, how you basically had 16 hours, 18 hours to
Yeah,
basically turn around and get yourself ready for to play Chicago.
I think that's the biggest factor, and that's probably the regret that I have, and I think our team would have is whilst on the day and having watched Chicago, you know how good they are, and you suspect maybe there's a little bit of a gap. I honestly
Mm-hmm.
don't know how big that gap is
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they're deeper than us. They didn't necessarily have the same emotional challenge that we had the day before either. The back to back is just crazy. Like if we're talking about rule changes, like the back to back
oh my god.
is just an absolute joke. We have a lot of conversations about health and safety of the athlete, and let's start there probably.
Yeah.
Um, so it's
That's a real health. That's a real player load discussion, right? I think
it's
the
insane.
OTs is just sort of like this periphery. Hey, look,
Yeah,
we're doing something, and I don't necessarily, but I think that the day after, yeah, like you said, like you put it all out on the field against Saint Olaf. Like
you could see
that game
people's
was,
legs were completely
yeah,
gone, and it's the third time that we played St. Olaf, who are really good. Third time I think we played them in 2 weeks or something like
wow,
that. Um,
yeah,
massive rivalry game, bunch of bragging rights, Elite Eight,
mm-hmm.
all of that kind of stuff. So we
Yeah,
and you've got to win that game, right? So you're not going to save anything to try to be in
yeah,
good
yeah,
shape for Chicago. So yeah, we just put
yeah,
everything in that game and made I think a silly mistake early on. A player that doesn't
mm-hmm.
usually get beat one on one in the way that he did and gave away the penalty. Again, I don't think he does that if he's not played
Yeah.
110 minutes like 16 hours before or whatever it
His
was,
legs
right?
feel like iron and they
Yeah,
just won't bend. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Probably my one regret is I do think with our pieces and Jared and Wes kind of
yeah. Mm-hmm.
defensively, we probably could have lived 1v1 for longer in the game. We waited
Uh-huh.
until the last 15 minutes to go
Yeah.
1v1 and
Yeah.
put an extra player forward. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just because you have to respect the pieces they have up front, but
Oh yeah, you can't. I
yeah,
mean, to me, it's always like, when you're playing them, it's like you're. I don't want to say vulnerable, right? Like they are capable of making you vulnerable at any point in the field, and so anything you change just leads it to another set of
exactly,
issues that you have to
yeah,
deal with, right? So if you go one on one, that's all great, but their midfielders were so good coming through. Like
yeah.
you could be marking those guys, but the other guys that can't keep up with their midfielder
And
force,
now
you
you're
could
missing
lose
your
with no
plus
sweat.
one, right?
And now
That's the word.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
all right. So I will say Chicago again was just really good. I'm not taking away from them,
No, totally fair.
yeah,
Totally fair.
yeah, yeah. And
They should have won
I
it. They
thought,
deserve to win it, and they've been knocking
oh,
on the door
I
for a long time.
totally,
So
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I totally agree with you there. It is funny though. I didn't think that they were some, and maybe it's by design, right? Like I didn't think that they were some goal scoring powerhouse team. I just thought they were very good and they got the goals they needed and then buttoned down, right? Like we're not going to
yeah.
let anything happen at this point. So they would get one. It's like
I think they conceded
The
two
Italian
goals in
national
one game
team.
all year, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Italian national team back in the day,
that's
like
probably a
they
good
would
point.
get one
Yeah,
goal, get one goal, and you're not getting through them after that. So good luck, right?
100%. Yeah.
Um, right. So, what do you do? What sort of plans do you have? What do you do during the spring, like the spring season?
Yeah. In terms of the soccer pieces, we pick a few of the key areas that we feel like we're maybe missing or or need a little bit of extra attention, or maybe we're graduating some guys and we need to kind of reteach these concepts. So it's different every single year. We'll pick two or three. One of the concepts will probably be like a isolated individual technical piece, and then we'll probably go one or two just like system pieces, and we just try to lay down enough of a framework that those guys can come in the fall and be ready to go, and not just starting from scratch. So for us, for instance, we graduated 13 guys the year before last year,
Yeah.
so it was a really new team this year. And I think whilst they got a lot of valuable experience, we obviously achieved quite a lot. There's a lot of growth in terms of how we build and how we control games with the ball. I think we can be better there. So that's probably where we'll place a lot of emphasis. And then a ton of culture stuff, to be honest. One of the, I mean, you graduate a huge class, 13 guys, and there's especially two of them are, All American forwards, and one of them's, program record and assist and all that stuff. So there's some anxiety that comes with that.
Really?
But the fun part of that is that you actually are forced to relearn and reteach your culture. And I actually think that was a huge part of our success this year, is that whilst we missed those guys in some ways, it really did. It forced us to kind of relearn and discover ourselves again. So it's just a little bit of an organic way and organic time to do that. I think if you wait till the fall to try to teach that stuff, you're in trouble. So you have to spend probably equal time, 50-50 in terms of the soccer pieces and the culture and leadership development stuff. So
I've been thinking a lot about like spring and what the value of a spring is, and I think the elite teams like you, and I think use it to the best of their ability to sort of keep molding the team in the way that you need it to be molded, so that in the fall they come in and then everything's level set, they know what's going on, and they can just, that's when you can assimilate in the freshmen and sort of have them work on them. And
if you're trying to assimilate the entire roster, you're in a bit of trouble. You just got to be able to bring in that group, that younger group.
I was going to ask you another question about that. Let me ask you something. This is about, and by no means give out your secret sauce, but like, what do you change the sort of the way do you change the way you play year to year, or are you one of those who just sort of like, this is the way I want our team to play? I'm the coach, I'm defining how we play. This is how we're doing. I'm recruiting to get guys to come into this. Or are you just sort of like, hey, we don't have any forwards, so let's go, five in the back, five in the middle, and call it a day, and that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I don't mind talking about it at all. I would say I've always been a system coach historically, and 2018 up until last year, very much like, this is our system. This is the way we play. Let's go. And it worked. And we had a lot of really useful pieces that let us do that. My teams have always been very top heavy as well. We've kind of overpowered sides with goals. 2019, I think all three of our starting forwards were in the top 6 in the country in some kind of goal scoring, goal creation category. We were scary going forward. But when we graduated that group, that 13 went, this year was actually the first time that we went away from being really system driven. And one of us, it's just a product of who we have. We just didn't have the key pieces to let us, and a couple of really key areas that we still need to strengthen. I'm still not sure whether we can get back to being a system team, but probably our biggest strength this year is that our group was just really resilient and unbelievably tactically flexible. So we picked that up really early, that they were willing and able to kind of take on some different tactical information, some different shapes. There's still some non-negotiables that just, it doesn't matter how we play, we're always going to have this be part of the program. But the group honestly was really adaptable, and I think that probably made, and having spoken to, Travis at St. Olaf and a few other people,
Yeah.
it sounds like that made it really difficult to scout us as well. I don't know whether that's the reason they keep doing that, but it's definitely an added bonus because again, when we're playing 3 or 4 different shapes and guys are playing 2 and sometimes 3 slightly different
Like spots.
positions,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, made it quite difficult to play against us.
Yeah. Reason why I asked that is I spoke with somebody earlier today and talked about, I just, this is a box. Like,
Yeah,
play within the box. We can go wherever we want in the box, but we don't necessarily leave the box. And then we talk about systems
yeah.
so that got my interest.
I think as a
Right,
coach,
because
like you kind of want to control things to a certain extent, right? So the idea of having a system and a way of playing is obviously very
yeah,
appealing. If you're having success with it,
yeah,
awesome. You feel like you're doing your job, but
right,
ultimately the aim of the game is to win games and have a positive
yeah.
experience. So
I also think the reality too is, especially in the collegiate game, I think systems work well in places where you can pick your players in,
yeah,
right? Like, so at the professional level, that makes a ton of sense because you can literally go out on the market and be like, I want to pick that guy, and you pay him enough money, he's going to come in, right? Like,
exactly.
I think that's right. Whereas I think at the collegiate level, yeah, it's a little bit more random, and I think the players, there's a little bit more where you have to take into account the players that you have and
100%.
and the way they play, because you're not gonna, hate to say it, once I, I think players do get better, don't get me wrong, but I think the sort of the formation of a player is already there when they step on the
As
field
an
for the
18,
first time.
19-year-old, for sure,
Yeah.
for
There
sure.
there's so much that is so
Hmm.
baked into them that you're like, it's too much work, I think, to
We actually talk about that in our individual meetings and how technical,
hmm
tactical, psychological, physical, and like
yeah,
what percentage growth are you realistically going to be able to add through a year or through your 4 years.
yeah,
And in those technical, tactical, psychological, yeah, maybe psychological is a bit more, but you're probably talking about
uh
5, 10%, like say 10% if
yeah,
you really, really develop. The only
yeah,
area that you can really, really make massive strides is probably that physical area. For me,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that I agree with, right? Like I hate to say it, if a player can't has no concept of dribbling the ball
Yeah,
at the age of 18, he's just not. You might moderately make him a little bit better.
right,
Like maybe he could start dribbling, but if he's not, like you're
for
not going to
sure.
break that, right? It's just sort of baked in. Or
And
same thing I always say with
yeah,
passing. Like if somebody hasn't fundamentally been taught how to pass and when to pass, it's really hard to break them over a cycle or the cycle of a
100%. Yeah,
college season.
yeah.
Yeah. So
And players win games more than systems win games. Obviously, tactics are very
no,
important, but
yeah,
play
yeah, yeah.
ultimately you need a player
Ultimately,
to
it's a
make a play,
player's
right?
game, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Ultimately, it's a player's game, right?
Yeah,
Because you have, I mean, you, some control, but that control gets placed in their hands when some whistle
right,
blows, right? Like you can't, or
right.
at their feet, like you can't. Um, you have some, like I said, you do have some impact on who you move and sort of those different things, but ultimately, it's the players in the field that have to
Right.
deliver. Um, which is why I say Everton should fire every single one of their players and not what's his name, the coach Lampard.
Frank Lampard.
It's,
I,
yeah.
well,
They
yet to
should have
be
gotten rid of
determined with
all of the
Frank,
players and
unfortunately.
started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see. He'll get another job somewhere.
Oh,
He's
totally,
got to be a little
totally.
bit more
It's just
careful with the type of place
Everton's
he
a
chooses.
mess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But like I said, I mean, I heard somebody say it's easier to fire a coach than it is to fire 20, 30 players on a roster. I'm like, no, it's just as easy. You just got to write, pink slips
Maybe
for
not at the
30
pro
people.
level where the squad's worth $100 billion
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Every agent would love that. Fire him.
Yeah.
Go. Like, we'll get the payout. That's awesome. Um, all right. How do you go about recruit? Like, do you recruit players or do you recruit positions? Combination of both? Are you looking for, again, knowing that you're bringing in kids that are going to be into your
Yeah.
culture, like you're going to be assimilated into a culture and you want to make sure it's a right fit?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of a hard question because it depends where you are in a cycle. If you're a program that is consistently graduating, like 7 to 8 every year,
Hmm.
it's a different prospect versus if you're a program that recruits like one big class, tries to have,
Hmm.
50 to 60% of your team kind of like together across a
Hmm.
longer period of time, and then smaller classes along the way. We're more that way. I like to
Hmm.
bring in a larger group and then kind of maintain with
Hmm.
smaller classes as we
Hmm.
go. So when you replace that large group, you have to take a little bit more risk and probably take
Hmm.
some gambles, give some people some chances.
Hmm.
Versus when you're bringing in a class of 7 just to maintain,
Hmm.
you're being way more selective. You're trying to pick individual positions. Yeah, so we're probably a little bit more in kind of like the smaller phase of being far more
Hmm.
selective. We'll go to specific clubs that we know very well and coaches that I have personal relationships with, or Tyler, my assistant, has personal relationships with. So we do a lot of kind of like the character assessment stuff
Hmm.
through club coaches. Um,
Yeah.
and obviously you pick up on some things when you meet with kids and their parents in the office, and it's
Yeah.
usually their parents are the
Yeah.
ones that are giving
It's
away some of
usually your parents. Yeah.
the red flags.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we've been really lucky over my time here. Again, Gustavus is a
Hmm.
place where a lot of people wanna go, and we're typically
Want
in
to go?
recruiting battles
Yeah.
with kind of the mid major Division Ones
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
versus
But
other
what
Division Three schools.
what's your recruiting region? Like, do you go all over? Do you bring in kids from all over, or do you like
It's
particular to
our
Minnesota?
it's so different from where I've been previously. Where the places I
Uh-huh.
was at previously, you had to bring in people from all over the country, realistically.
Yeah.
Partly because you weren't recruiting to like a legacy and a history that made it really easy for you
Yeah.
to keep your better
Yeah.
local players.
Hmm.
But now, yeah, it's probably about 70 to 80% of our guys are going to be from Minnesota, and then there's always
Uh-huh.
random links to different
Yeah.
geo markets. And a couple of local neighboring states. So Iowa, Wisconsin is
Yeah.
always going to be a place that
Wisconsin.
we get some
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
The kind of the evolution of club soccer towards like the ECNL model or the A model, whatever it
Hmm.
might be, is providing you with more access to people from outside of
Yeah.
kind of your traditional geo market. So
Hmm.
we're going to add a couple of players from states that we haven't accessed previously. We'll
Hmm.
see how that goes.
Hmm.
We like the guys, but it would probably be kind of the ECNL stuff that has given us that
Hmm.
where previous kind of club
Yeah.
model from the last 5 years wouldn't have done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always said like whatever you think of all the if anything, these leagues, ECNL,
Yeah,
MLS, all that kind, sort
I
of
will
have done a
say
good
this.
job of pulling players together, right? Like so you could see them.
There are some really good players, some really good clubs for sure. It's always tough to try to not battle, it's not the right language, but the club is always trying to push on players to as high a
Hmm.
level as they possibly can. I don't know whether they're
Hmm.
always having conversations about experience and what do you want from your college experience versus
Hmm.
you're a Division 1 player or whatever, right?
Hmm.
And it makes sense from a business model. They're going to get more people into their lower age groups if they can say, hey, we've got X number of players to Division
Right.
1 schools.
Sure. Sure.
That's tough. Versus like we're more likely to get a guy from Minnesota United's MLS Next squad than we are from many ECNLs because the MLS,
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
because the MLS Next
That's an,
guys they don't really care what level you go and play at. They're just trying to
yeah.
go through
Yeah.
the system and find the next one or two
Yeah.
pros that can help the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
help the the team, right?
That's interesting. Somebody. I can't even remember. All these interviews end up sort of like getting all jumbled in my head, and I'm like, oh, I talked to I can't remember who, but somebody. Um, they raise the same point. They think that the biggest issue is that clubs there is a there is an a not well it's a bias, but a push by clubs to push their elite players to Division One, whether they realize what Division One is not. And then there's obviously everybody wants that Instagram moment, like, whoa, look how great he is. He went Division One, right? Like, do you do you have any kids who went down, hey, I want to go the Division One route, and then just said, you know what, I don't think I want to go that way? Like, do you have any of those kids?
We've had Division One, got multiple Division One guys transfer in from different places, and they're maybe on the fringes of the Division One program that they were at, and just got to a point where I want to play. It's a game. I want to enjoy the sport that I've played my entire life and loved. So we have some of that. We've had some really, really talented players who came in. They had Division One offers for whatever reason. We managed to get them to Gustavus. They had amazing freshman year, and then they've kind of dipped their toe in and kind of had conversations with some Division Ones. Ultimately, they've always decided to stay. And I think because we've provided a great environment, a great experience. They're winning a bunch of games and playing big roles, right? Which again goes back to I mean, what do you want your experience to be as a player, right?
I don't think enough is it's not talked about enough. That, like, what do you want your experience really to be? I sometimes wonder, like, who's doing the pushing here? You know what I mean? Like, is it the kid?
Parents,
some kids who
coaches.
Parents, it's the parents, the coaches, right? There's this perception that they're not going to have to pay a dime if they go Division One, right? Like, hey, I'd like some of that, right? Like, which is not true. Like, all these different things that sort of feed into that. But I ultimately say, like, if a player was honest, and that's my big thing, it's like just being honest with yourself. Like, what do you value? I know with me as a player, I didn't care where I went. Like, I just wanted to play. Let me play in the game. Like, I just wanted to make sure that I played. And,
For sure.
And I had 4 years. I played at, barring injury, I played every game. And so I think that's...
And loved it, right?
And loved it. It was fantastic. Like, I played afterwards... I played with guys who were Division One. They had a great experience, and some of the guys played, some of them didn't, and that was fine too. And I didn't feel lesser of it. Like, I played.
Yeah,
and it was a big deal. So I think a lot more kids need to come to that realization. Like,
completely agree. I don't know how we get there without the mentors within. Obviously, parents are going to be parents,
like, that I agree with.
You've got to find a way to get that messaging to them in their club and their high school environments. Like you said, the pull of the Instagram post is probably pretty strong. Makes it tough. But it's the same thing. I get. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I get asked, like, what's next for you? Are you going to try to go to Division One yourself and coach? It's the exact same conversation for me. It's like, what's that going to provide me that I don't have already? I've got amazing facilities. I've got access to really, really good players. We win. I've got great bosses, great co-work, all of it. It's just it's not going to provide me the experience that I'm looking for. It doesn't fit my values.
And it's a lot hard. I think that Division One level, it's a lot harder to find a type of atmosphere in Division Three for the athletes. Like, I got to believe,
agree.
Right? Like, I'll just leave it at that. That I do think that the Division Three is able to provide an atmosphere for student athletes that I don't. Sometimes I wonder if Division Three can, right? Like, so large, so they own you to a certain extent, right? Like, I mean, you hear it's worse if you're football or basketball, obviously. Like,
for sure.
I think even all the sports are like that. Like, if a dime is going into a sport, they own you, and that's the way they look at it. Because if you don't want to, they'll find somebody else, and I think you have to, even as a coach, like, that opens up a whole series of different aspects of your coaching world. Do you want to get involved in that?
Me personally, I don't want to be that person. Like, the relationship component of it is too important.
It's a little harsher. I was going to ask you something totally not not on my list of questions because
Go
it
for it.
was a good one until I forgot it. All right, let me just. Is this incoming class? Is it a big class or a small class? Like because of the way you said, you get a big class and then you.
It'll be a smaller class. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's a bit of a weird one because of the COVID kind of graduation years.
yeah,
We thought that
yeah.
we could possibly graduate another 10 this year, and every
Uh-huh.
single one of those guys has decided to come back for their actual COVID semester.
Uh-huh.
Which changes stuff a little bit. So it's not as clean as typical, but yeah, it's probably like a mid.
Yeah,
It'll probably be like 8 to 10, somewhere in there.
yeah.
Not
I'm waiting
small,
to
but
hear
yeah.
whether my application has been accepted. Well, I haven't been accepted to Gustavus, so I'll be out there.
I'll go talk to
Um,
admissions, see if I can get it for you.
yeah, yeah. Is Wesley graduating?
No,
Sanders?
he's coming back. Yeah, Wes could have done. He's
I did not want to hear that. Like, that's how am I gonna play? Like,
You're a
there's no way
goalkeeper,
I
of
can.
course you are. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
Well,
don't
we
know
might
how
need.
I'd take.
He's getting older, so we might need to kind of manage his minutes or something like that. Looking for someone
I'm a
to
freshman.
share.
I'm a freshman. You got to sort of start rolling me in. Come
Yeah,
on. Outstanding goalkeeper, by the way.
he's
Like
special.
I
Thank you.
another one.
Yeah,
Like he can play. He can keep playing. I don't know if he's out there. If he has any prospects, but he could keep playing. I think he's that good.
he's that. I thank you for saying that. I agree, and I think people have started to realize that as a freshman he was incredible, injured
Yeah.
and COVID and that type of stuff. So it was really
Mm-hmm.
fun to see him have his senior year and him look,
Yeah.
just like he had previously. Did you see the shootout between us and Eau Claire? He made 4
I
penalty
don't think
saves.
I did. Oh yeah. I was
Unbelievable.
like, nobody does that. I kept
It was
saying like
crazy.
nobody does that. Like I
2 of
kept
them full
that.
extension with his left hand as
Oh
well.
yeah,
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 he's a good
yeah.
goalkeeper. Yeah,
Just,
yeah.
just, just amazing. I kept waiting for them to be like so psyched out where all the balls are going just wide or over, right? Because they're like, I don't know where I'm going to put the ball. He
Yeah,
was just outstanding.
he was good. Yeah.
That was a great game. I'm supposed to talk to the coach at some point. I don't know where I have it on I have it on the calendar. So
Casey?
I'll bring
Yeah.
that up. Yeah,
Tell
yeah.
him I say hi.
Yeah, we'll do. I'm sure he's like, yeah, sure, right. Um,
Yeah, we're lucky though. We've got a few of those, and Otis is coming back, and Jared's coming back, and Rafi Catalan is
Otis,
coming back as
Otis
well.
was my
So,
man too. I really liked him. I really
yeah,
liked him.
he is actually another one that I think could probably play afterwards as well.
Yeah,
He's
there's something to him, and I always say like there are players on the field. I watch, all these games, and I'm like, that guy. Like, there's something about his presence on the field where you're like, he's different, right?
he
And
is
he was
different.
one where I was like,
Yeah.
he is different. He's just he's operating on a different plane than anyone else.
He runs, and he's the guy in training where you sit back and watch, and he runs every single training session. He's one of your top picks. Wes is probably the first
Yeah,
pick on everyone's team, but
yeah,
after that, yeah,
yeah. He was one of my top 11.
yeah.
I
And I
liked him.
appreciate you recognizing
Oh,
that. Yeah, that was it was
oh,
cool
thank
to
you.
see.
And Wesley was
Very
one
good.
of my 4 goalkeepers that I picked that I thought were some of the best in the country that I'd watched. So anyhow, all right. Let me ask you. Because you're going to recruit me. What's the best way to get in touch with you? Is it just email? Do you have a process that you like to follow from a recruiting standpoint?
Um, Honestly, yeah, email is totally fine. Instagram has become probably a big part of the recruiting process as well. So yeah, give us a follow on Instagram and DM, and we'll go from there. Send me your highlights.
Yeah, I got highlights. They're
Love
still
it.
on VHS. Still on VHS though.
Mail me the VHS and the VHS player. That'd be
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I have to send the whole equipment, all the equipment. That's great. There was something else I wanted to ask you. Do you? All right, so I'll ask you. So this is very public. So I'm trying actually to put together because as a goalkeeper, I like the goalkeeping aspect. Do you have a goalkeeper coach?
We do, but it's really tough to. It's probably the least supported coaching position at the Division Three level, unfortunately, right? Like that is
Yeah,
one of the
yeah,
factors is we're dealing with smaller
yeah, yeah,
budgets.
yeah,
You
yeah,
probably you're ending up hiring someone on a stipend, and if they're a local
yeah, yeah,
person and they're good, awesome.
yeah,
But yeah, sometimes it's tough when we had a really good goalkeeper coach a couple of years ago, and he gets a
uh-huh.
job out of state, and you're
Yeah,
starting
yeah,
from
yeah,
scratch.
yeah,
But
yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Um,
we're set for the
yeah,
next year. You'll like him. He's good.
yeah.
Latham, yep, he'll do
Okay.
put a good session together for you.
Yeah, yeah. No, the reason why I ask is I'm trying to put together a almost like a roundtable discussion. Like here are these are we're one on ones, and I want to get like 3, 4 goalkeeper coaches, Division 3 goalkeeper coaches, and just want to talk about goalkeeping and sort of what.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah.
Yeah, if
Um.
he's interested, I would love to have him. You know, like I said, I'm trying to. As obviously, I want these Division 3 goalkeeper coaches because maybe I'll even talk about that. Like, hey, how do you survive? Because, like,
Carrots
like
and ramen
some of these.
noodles, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. A big fan.
Yeah.
So, if
That
he's
sounds like a great
interested,
idea
by all means, have
for
him
sure.
shoot me an email.
We'll do.
I did have a question for you. I did have a real question for you. All right, so let's just say in your recruiting world, the players that you recruit, what do you think is the biggest difference between a high school player, a kid that comes out of high school club and then makes the jump to college? What do you think that difference they have to figure out when they get to Gustavus?
Yeah, good question. I think probably uniquely for our level is guys are coming out of that club environment where again a lot of the messaging is D1 D1 D1, and I think
Right.
some, no matter how much you tell them how difficult the level is and how challenging it's going to be, don't recognize that coming into a Division 3 program at this level, competing for the things
Yeah.
that we're competing for, is going to be the hardest thing they've ever done in soccer. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the guys that take that message on board and they like physically prepare and are fit and firing and sharp and really take their summer seriously, those are the guys that give themselves a shot. But
Yeah.
every year there are guys who we really like as we're recruiting them through the club process, and then they commit to us. Maybe they wanted to go to a Division 1, and Gustavus is where they're at.
Right.
They train a little bit in the summer, but then the grad party cycle starts, and they spend the summer on a boat, and it's that type of thing. It for me, it
Mm-hmm.
comes down to like the preparation of the athlete coming in because there's a bunch of
Yeah.
super technical and gifted guys
Mm-hmm.
out there. Who just how serious are you about your preparation, and some of that will probably inform you on how much they actually love the game as well, because
Yeah.
ultimately you're like
Very true.
your goal
Yeah.
was I'm a Division 1 soccer player and that was the be all end all, and you were going to
Yeah.
work just hard enough to get that, then you probably weren't the guy that we
Yeah.
wanted anyway. We want the guy that
Yeah.
loves soccer, wants to play.
Yeah.
We don't have to beg them to go play games in the summer or look for a
Yeah.
USL2
Yeah.
team or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Do
probably the
you do
biggest thing.
you
Yeah.
yeah. Do you play if you're a freshman, do you play are you I mean, are you do you throw them into games? Like or do you play your freshmen as they come in? If they've earned, right? Like
Yeah,
understanding that.
if we can. Again,
Yep.
we recruit on a little bit of a different cycle. So typically, what we do is when we
Yeah.
add in that big class, the squad number swells, and we need to provide
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a second layer of games. So we'll have what we would call
Yeah.
development games underneath. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of our freshmen, if they're not ready for a first team game, would get they're training and doing all of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
things you need to do on a daily basis, but you're getting those
Mm-hmm.
those real games, and maybe against a JUCO or another
Yeah.
Division 3 second team or somewhere like that,
Yeah.
or men's league team from the Twin Cities.
Yeah.
So they're still getting the game time, and a lot of times that's where guys prove themselves. Like Jack Knight for us this year was a Division 1 transfer, but he hadn't played for a while. What
Okay.
just wasn't up to speed, wasn't quite ready for first team games. Got some minutes, but he got his big confidence boost and his sharpness from those development team games, and then he's probably our best player at the end of the year. I mean,
Yeah.
he scores an absolute cracker in the Mike Championship game, and um,
Yeah.
does a really really good job in the national tournament as a centre back for us as well.
Do you do that every year? Do you have those development games every year?
No, as the team
Just
shrinks
that
down,
big class.
it's the
Yeah,
big
yeah.
class.
As
You
it
probably
shrinks.
have the
Yeah,
development scheduled for
yeah,
2 years, 1 or 2
yeah,
years, and then as you shrink down
yeah.
into a more condensed squad, it goes away for 2 years, and then big
And
class
then it
comes
comes
in.
back to yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Oh, that
it
makes sense.
There's not a perfect way to do it, but that's what I've done, and it
I,
seems to have worked.
yeah.
I like it.
I'm not sure there's a perfect way to do
Yeah,
anything in this, like on this game, right? Like that's the truth. Like there's 50 different ways. What Chicago does is different than what you do,
totally.
and you're all finding your different successes at some point. So
It'd be nice if you're Chicago and you could say, "Hey, do you want to come to the #1 ranked school in the world?" You know, that helps, I think.
they asked me, and I said no.
Yeah.
You're right. Like I was like, no way do I want to go to that in school. Are you kidding me? It's too cold.
Yeah, there you go.
Like, hey, Coach, this was great. Really do appreciate the time. Appreciate your insights into the game. Really consider yourself having a fan out here in New Jersey. So I fully expect
Thank
you
you.
guys to make a trip out here to play locally. So I can go visit, and unless
Would
I'm
love
in
it.
Minneapolis the
I
next
got to get
time.
you a Gustavus scarf though as well that you can hang in the background.
Yeah, I'm this is my YouTube studio and my work office, so I actually have some thoughts about how I'm going to take everything out and redo everything, and so
Send me your
scarves are going to
address.
be coming.
I'll get you a
All
cap and
right.
a scarf. We'll kit you out.
Oh, nice. Totally. Yes. Now you're my favorite coach, right? Like, I was going to comment on your sweatshirt, but like the last 3 videos, I'm like, dude, that's a nice sweatshirt. Like, can you send like,
We've
like it's starting to
upgraded. Yeah,
get
we've got
creepy. Yeah. So, maybe during the summer before the season, we can connect and do a quick, hey, what you're thinking, how it's going to look, and
anytime.
do that.
Anytime.
Right.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much, Coach.
Yeah.
If you like this show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also find me on anti-social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks. This is a message from my Chief Marketing Officer. I think this keeps him happy.